Welcome back and thanks for checking out another episode in our Antique Auto Repair playlist. This episode will take you step by step as Ethan re-rivets the Prudden Clincher Wheels on our 1916 Warner Auto trailer. We'll go more in depth on the trailer in another episode, but for now, we're going to start by jacking the trailer up and removing the wheel. In our case, the first thing we need to do is remove the cap to access the nut and bearings and remove the wheel. The cap covers a castle nut that's secured by a cotter pin. Once Ethan pulls the cotter pin, he can use a crescent wrench to loosen and remove the nut. Those of you paying close attention may notice that we have a left-hand thread on the wrong side of the trailer. That little clue is leading us to believe that our axle may have been swapped at some point during the life of the trailer. Once the nut is free, the washer drops out along with the cone, inner cone, and rollers, which together make up the bearing. Now that the wheel is off, you can take a look at our axle, leaf springs, and get a little look at the frame of the trailer as well. The next step is to air down and dismount the tire. Remember that these are clinchers, so we need to unseat the lip of the tire from the lip of the rim in order to fully dismount the tire. Note that this is not a restoration and we aren't going to be painting the rims or the wood fellows at this time. This is a needed repair so we can tow our trailer in the next couple of weeks. Do remember that while this looks complicated, it's actually more annoying than complicated. Changing tires, tubes, flaps, and even fixing rivets was pretty common when the trailer was new. These are in fact roadside repairs that we should all be familiar with. To completely dismount the tire, you will next need to deflate the tube. Use a valve core remover tool like the one we have here to remove the valve core and then depress the tire to deflate the tube. Ethan needed a little more pressure than what he got from using just his hands, so ended up standing gently on the outside of the tire to depress the tire and thus deflate the tube. With the tube deflated, Ethan attached another of his tire tools. He attached it to the valve stem to assist with fishing the valve stem through the wheel. It also has an attachment for chasing damaged valve stem threads and a core puller, but in this case, he was using it to keep the stem aligned. Now the tire is ready to come off the rim. For this step, he used a thin spoon, which is actually meant for bodywork, but is just the right thickness to slip easily between the rim on the tire in order to unseat the lip on the tire from the lip on the rim. In doing this, it is imperative that you take your time and act slowly and deliberately, so that you protect the tube from damage. The last thing you want to have to do is replace or patch a tube because you put a hole in it while trying to make another repair. With the tire separated from the rim on one side, you can then fish the tube out from under the rim just as far as the valve stem. With the tube and tire separated, you can then be a little more aggressive on removing the tire from the rim. Ethan used a small pry bar along with his spoon to bar the tire over and off the rim. He completed that step by fishing the valve stem out from the rim and through the flap to prevent it from otherwise pinching in the rim, which could have resulted in damage to the stem. With the tube and tire removed, the next step is to remove the tire flap. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with this setup, the tire flap acts as a protective barrier that keeps the tube from rubbing against the rivets inside the rim. You'll notice in this brief clip that once we removed the tire flap, the failed rivet was visible for the first time on the inside of the rim. Next, we headed to the shop to drill out the failed rivets and install the new ones. While only one set of rivets had actually failed on us, we chose to replace all of them since we had the time and materials to do so. The next part of this repair began by punching out the failed rivet. Once the rivets were loose, Ethan used a set of vice grips to pull them through the rim and the wood. A little light tapping with a hammer was necessary to finish the job. You'll notice the two failed rivets and the Prudden marked plate on the anvil. With the rivets removed, it was time to drill out our holes. We chose to go with a replacement rivet that was just one size larger than the original rivets that we took out. That way we were sure to get a clean, undamaged hole. The new, larger rivets also came with a slightly larger head, which we liked for a stronger hole. Once the holes for your rivets are cleaned or re-drilled, set your rims on a sturdy surface and put your new rivets through the plate and into the rim. Tap gently if necessary to seat them fully. Repeat as needed. Now turn your rim over so that the heads of the rivets are against a firm surface and the shank is facing toward you. Next, use a set of bolt cutters to clip the shank shorter, thereby bringing it closer to the inside of the rim. Cut the shank from both sides so that it resembles the cut end of a pencil. That shape will give you the best result when you peen the rivet to the rim. Strike the shank with several short blows from the hammer. You should notice the rivet begin to spread as it flattens. Finally, use a set to dress the rivets and make them as smooth and flat as possible. They will have a slight crown to them, but that will be covered again by the tire flap. Now it's time to reverse engineer the whole process and reinstall the tire flap, tube, and tire. Remember to begin by lining up the hole in the flap for the valve stem with the hole in the rim. You'll still have to work that alignment as you go, and it may need adjusting once you get the flap back on the rim, but it should be pretty easy if they started aligned. Next, reinstall the tire. You will undoubtedly need to bring your tire spoon back for this part, and possibly a pry bar depending on how difficult the tire is choosing to be at any given moment. Work the tire around the rim and get one side over the lip of the rim before progressing further. Once the tire is effectively on the rim, inflate the tube to give it some body before you slip it between the rim and the tire. This will make installation that much easier. This is also a great time to bring back the tire installation tool. Screw it onto the valve stem and thread it through the rim to make sure that the tube, flap, and rim are all aligned, and that nothing will pinch the valve stem in the future. Once the tube is set inside the tire, start at the valve stem and work the lip of the tire under the lip of the rim. That should help to keep you from inadvertently ripping out the valve stem as you walk the tire around the rim and seat it. A new tire should be soft enough that you can pretty much do this part by hand. While ours isn't new, it's still malleable enough to do the job without added tools. If you need to use your pry bar or spoon, just remember to be gentle and know where your tool ends and your tube begins to avoid accidentally damaging the tube. While you still have the wheel off, take the opportunity to do a little more maintenance while you have the chance. Adjust the nuts around the hub and make sure everything's tight. Now finish the job by reinstalling the wheel. In our case, that means we have to reset the bearings, replace the washer, reattach the castle nut, replace the cotter pin, and secure it appropriately. If it wasn't that we had greased all of our components just over a year ago, and the grease was still completely usable, we would suggest that you re-grease the bearings and the inside of the cap before you reinstall those parts. As always, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the latest video in our repair series. If you did, please hit the like button, and remember to click the subscribe if you want to follow more of our adventures on or off the pavement. And as always, ring the notification bell to stay up to date with our content. Thanks.